Rain hammered the tin roof of the garage like a drum that would not quit. Noah had his hands deep inside the engine of a pickup truck when the woman standing behind him said something that made his wrench slip. "I wish you were mine." He straightened up slowly, grease streaking his forearms, and turned to face her. She stood there, soaked, steady-eyed, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of someone who had chosen every word before she said it. The garage sat at the corner of Maple and 3rd, a squat brick building with a hand-painted sign that read, "Right Auto Repair." It was not much. 2 service bays, a waiting area with mismatched chairs, and a coffee machine that had not worked properly since the previous summer. But it was his. Noah Wright had bought it 6 years ago with every dollar he had saved from working under other men's hoods, and he had turned it into the only reliable shop within 20 miles of Beaumont, a small town in southern Georgia where everybody knew everybody and nothing stayed secret for long. Noah was 33 years old. He had broad shoulders, hands that were permanently stained with motor oil no matter how hard he scrubbed, and a quiet way about him that made people trust him before he ever said a word. He did not smile often, but when he did, it changed his whole face, softened the hard edges that years of responsibility had carved into him. He had one employee, a part-time kid named Derek who helped on weekends. The rest of the time, Noah ran the shop alone. He opened at 7, closed at 5, picked up his daughter from the sitter by 5:30, and had dinner on the table by 6. Every single day. No exceptions. Serena was 5 years old. She had her father's dark eyes and her mother's curly hair, though Noah tried not to think about that second part too much. Her mother, Tanya, had left when Serena was barely a year old. No dramatic fight, no slamming doors, just a note on the kitchen counter that said she was not ready and a car pulling out of the driveway before sunrise. Noah had read that note 11 times before he believed it was real. He never chased her. He never called. He just picked up his daughter, held her against his chest, and decided right there that he would be enough. He had to be. That was 4 years ago. And every day since, Noah had kept his world small on purpose. The garage, Serena, and the short stretch of road between them. No complications, no surprises. Until today. The rain had started around noon, a heavy downpour that turned the parking lot into a shallow lake. Noah was under the hood of Mrs. Patterson's Buick when he heard tires crunching on wet gravel outside. He did not look up right away. People came and went. That was the business. The bell above the door chimed. A woman's voice called out over the rain. "Hello? Is anyone here?" "Back here," Noah called, still focused on the serpentine belt he was replacing. "Give me 1 second." He wiped his hands on a rag, tossed it over his shoulder, and walked around the Buick toward the front of the shop. The woman stood just inside the doorway, water dripping from her jacket onto the concrete floor. She was holding her car keys in one hand and her phone in the other, and she looked like someone who had been having the kind of day that does not get better. Noah opened his mouth to ask what she needed, and then he stopped. He recognized her face before he remembered her name. The high cheekbones, the way she stood with one hand on her hip like she was bracing herself against the world. It hit him all at once, like turning a corner and running straight into a memory. "Denise?" She blinked. Her eyes moved from his face to the name stitched on his work shirt, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise first, then disbelief, then something softer that she quickly tried to hide. "Noah Wright," she said. "You've got to be kidding me. Denise Carter, or—" He caught himself, unsure if the last name still applied. "Still Carter," she said, and there was a weight behind those 2 words that told him not to press further. "My car broke down about a quarter mile up the road. I barely got it into your lot before it died completely." "What's it doing?" "Making a terrible noise and then nothing. Just nothing." Noah nodded. "Pull it into the second bay if it'll start. If not, I'll push it in." Let me take a look." They got the car inside, a silver Honda Accord with over 150,000 miles on it and a check engine light that had probably been on for months. Noah popped the hood and started his inspection, while Denise stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching him work. For a while, neither of them spoke. The rain filled the silence. Noah could feel her eyes on him, and it made him hyper-aware of every move he made. The way he leaned into the engine, the way his shirt stretched across his back, the grease on his fingers. "So," Denise finally said, "you own this place. 6 years now. I remember you always had your head under a hood, even back in school. You used to fix Mr. Bradley's truck in the parking lot during lunch." Noah almost smiled. "That truck was a disaster. I'm surprised it ever ran." "It ran because of you." Denise unfolded her arms and leaned against the workbench behind her. "You were always good with your hands." The words hung in the air a beat longer than they should have. Denise looked away first. "I didn't know you were back in Beaumont," Noah said, keeping his voice neutral as he tested the battery terminals. "Got back about 3 weeks ago. I'm staying with my cousin Sheila over on Oak Street while I figure things out." Figure things out was one of those phrases people used when the real answer was too heavy to say out loud. Noah understood that. He had used the same phrase himself years ago when people asked how he was doing after Tanya left. "Sheila's good people," he said simply. "She is." Denise watched him work for another moment. "You look different, Noah. I mean, good different. You look like you grew into yourself." He glanced up at her. "You look exactly the same." "Liar." "I mean it. Same girl who sat 2 rows ahead of me in Mr. Coleman's history class." Denise laughed, and the sound of it caught Noah off guard. It was warm and unguarded, and it cracked something open in the room that he was not sure he wanted cracked open. "Mr. Coleman," she repeated, shaking her head. "That man gave me a C- on my Civil War essay, and I'm still not over it." "He gave everybody a C-. I think it was his default grade." "You got a B." Noah raised an eyebrow. "You remember my grade?" Denise's smile faltered, not in a bad way, but in the way a person's face changes when they are about to say something they have been holding for a long time. "I remember a lot of things about you, Noah." The rain picked up outside, hammering harder against the roof. Noah kept his hands busy, checking the alternator connections, but his mind was no longer on the car. "We had some good times back then," he said carefully. "We did." Denise shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Do you ever think about it? About how things might have been different if—" She stopped herself. "If what?" She took a breath. "If people had said what they actually meant instead of just letting it go." Noah set his wrench down and looked at her directly. There was something in her eyes that he recognized because he had seen it in the mirror, the look of someone carrying a confession that had grown heavier with every year it went unspoken. "I had the biggest crush on you in high school," Denise said. The words came out fast, like she needed to get them out before she lost her nerve. "Junior year, senior year, probably even before that. I never told you because I didn't think you saw me that way. And I didn't want to ruin what we had. But I thought about it. A lot." Noah felt the ground shift under him, not dramatically. There was no thunderclap, no movie moment revelation. Just a quiet rearranging of something he thought he understood. "Denise, you don't have to say anything," she said quickly. "I know it was a long time ago. Being here, seeing you, it all came back. And I figured if I don't say it now, I'll spend another 15 years wishing I had." He wanted to tell her that he had noticed her, that he had spent most of senior year trying to work up the courage to ask her to prom and never did, that the day she left Beaumont for college, he sat in his truck in the school parking lot for an hour, feeling like something important had just slipped through his fingers. But those words belonged to a younger version of himself, a version that did not have a daughter depending on him, a business to run, and a history of being left behind by someone he trusted. So instead he said, "I'm glad you told me." It was honest. It was also incomplete, and Denise could tell. Before either of them could say anything else, a door at the back of the garage swung open, and a small voice echoed through the shop. "Daddy!" Serena came running in from the back room where Noah kept a small play area with coloring books and a beanbag chair, the makeshift daycare he had set up for afternoons when the sitter had to leave early. She was wearing rain boots that were a size too big and a purple jacket zipped up to her chin. "Daddy, I'm hungry. Is it lunchtime yet?" Noah crouched down to her level right away, rubbing his palms on his jeans to get the worst of the grease off. "Almost, baby girl. Give me 5 more minutes, okay?" "You said 5 minutes a long time ago," Serena said, with the devastating accuracy that only a 5-year-old can deliver. Noah glanced up and saw Denise watching them, watching him. There was something raw in her expression, something that went beyond nostalgia or attraction. She was seeing him in a way no one had in years, not just as a mechanic, not just as an old friend, but as a father. And whatever she saw made her press her lips together tightly, like she was holding back words she was not ready to say. "I didn't know you had a daughter," Denise said softly. "This is Serena." Noah lifted the girl onto his hip with the ease of a man who had done it 10,000 times. "Serena, this is Miss Denise. She's an old friend of Daddy's." Serena studied Denise with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Your hair is pretty," she announced. Denise's face broke into a smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. I like your boots." "They're purple," Serena said, as if this explained everything worth knowing. Noah felt something dangerous stirring in his chest. The sight of his daughter warming to someone, the ease of the moment, the way it felt like a window opening in a room that had been sealed shut for years. He shut it down immediately. He had to. "I should get her fed," Noah said, shifting Serena higher on his hip. "Your car's going to need a couple of days, alternators shot, and I'll need to order the part. I can call you when it's ready." Denise nodded slowly. The spell of the moment was breaking, and both of them could feel it. "Sure," she said. "You still have my number? Same one from, well, I guess not. Here." She pulled out her phone and gave him the number, which he typed into his own phone with one hand while balancing Serena with the other. "I'll call you soon as it's done," he said. Denise picked up her jacket from the chair where she had draped it. She looked at Noah one more time, a long, searching look that said everything her words had not finished saying. "It was really good to see you, Noah." "You too, Denise." She walked out into the rain. Noah stood in the doorway of his garage, his daughter on his hip, and watched her disappear down the sidewalk under a borrowed umbrella. Serena tugged at his collar. "Daddy, she was nice." "Yeah," Noah said quietly. "She was." He turned back inside, closed the bay door against the storm, and tried to convince himself that the tightness in his chest was nothing, that it would pass, that he had made the right call by letting the moment end where it did. But long after Serena was fed and playing with her crayons in the back room, Noah found himself standing over Denise's car, staring at the engine he was supposed to fix, and thinking about the girl who sat 2 rows ahead of him in history class, the one who had just told him she had been waiting 15 years to say what she said. And he wondered, for the first time in a very long time, whether keeping his world small was the same thing as keeping it safe. That evening, Noah stood at the kitchen stove stirring a pot of macaroni and cheese, while Serena sat at the table behind him, drawing circles on a piece of paper with a green crayon. The house was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that opened into a living room, but Noah had made it feel like a home. Serena's drawings covered the refrigerator door. A shelf by the window held a row of picture books arranged by color, because Serena had insisted that was the correct way to organize them. Everything in the house had a place, a purpose, a routine. Noah liked routine. Routine meant control, and control meant safety. He set a plate in front of Serena, cut her food into small pieces the way she liked, and sat down across from her. She ate with the messy concentration of a child who treated every meal like an event. And Noah watched her the way he always did, quietly, carefully, like she might disappear if he looked away for too long. "Daddy," Serena said between bites, "how come that lady knew you? Miss Denise? We went to school together, a long time ago." "Before I was born?" "Way before you were born." Serena considered this with the gravity of someone weighing a matter of national importance. "Was she your friend?" "She was." "Is she still your friend?" Noah picked up his fork and moved the food around his plate. "I think so, baby girl. Yeah." Serena seemed satisfied with that answer and returned to her macaroni. But the question stayed with Noah long after dinner was over, long after bath time and story time and the slow ritual of tucking Serena into bed with her stuffed elephant and the nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. He sat on the couch in the dark living room, the house quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old floorboards settling. He pulled out his phone and looked at Denise's number on the screen. He had saved it under her name with no last name, no emoji, no label, just Denise, like it was something too fragile to decorate. The last time Noah had let someone into his life, really let someone in, she had walked out before the sun came up and left him holding a baby who did not understand why her mother's side of the bed was suddenly cold. He had rebuilt everything after that. Every wall, every boundary, every careful distance between himself and the rest of the world, and those walls had kept him standing. They had kept Serena safe. They had kept the hurt at arm's length. But tonight, sitting in the dark with Denise's number glowing on his phone, Noah felt the cracks. He felt them in the way his chest had tightened when she laughed in the garage, in the way his hands had almost reached for her when she turned to leave, in the way Serena had said she was nice, with the simple certainty of a child who had not yet learned to distrust her own instincts. He set the phone down on the coffee table, screen facing down, and leaned his head back against the couch. The truth he did not want to admit, the one he had been pushing down since the moment Denise walked into his shop, was not that he was afraid of getting hurt again. He was afraid that he was not enough. A mechanic in a small town with grease under his fingernails and a daughter who needed him to be everything. What did a man like that have to offer a woman like Denise, who had been out in the world, who had lived a life beyond the borders of Beaumont? He told himself it did not matter. He told himself the smart thing was to fix her car, call her when it was done, and let her drive out of his life the same way she had driven in, passing through. He almost believed it. 3 days later, Noah was at the grocery store on a Saturday morning with Serena riding in the cart, her legs swinging over the edge as he pushed her down the cereal aisle. The alternator part for Denise's car had arrived the day before, and he had planned to install it on Monday. He had not called her yet. He was still deciding what to say, or more accurately, he was still deciding whether to say anything beyond, "Your car is ready." Serena was reaching for a box of cereal with a cartoon tiger on the front when Noah turned the corner into the next aisle and nearly ran his cart into someone else's. "Sorry, He stopped. Denise stood on the other side of the aisle, holding a bag of apples in one hand and a bottle of olive oil in the other. She was wearing a denim jacket and her hair was pulled back, and she looked completely different from the rain-soaked woman who had stumbled into his garage 3 days ago. She looked rested. She looked like herself. "Noah," she said, and the surprise in her voice was genuine. "Hey." "Hey." He gripped the handle of the cart a little tighter. "Sorry about that. Almost took you out with the shopping cart." "I've survived worse." Her eyes moved to Serena, who was staring at her with open curiosity from her seat in the cart. "Hi there. I remember you." Serena grinned. "You're the lady from Daddy's work." "That's me." Denise set the apples and olive oil in her basket and stepped closer. "I like your shirt." Is that a cat on it? That's Muffin, Serena said proudly. She's our cat. She's orange, and she sleeps on my bed and she doesn't like baths. Well, I don't know any cat that likes baths. Daddy tried to give her one, and she scratched him right here. Serena pointed to the back of her own hand to demonstrate. Denise looked at Noah with an expression that was half amusement, half something deeper, a warmth that she was not entirely trying to hide. Your dad tried to bathe a cat. That's brave. It was a mistake, Noah said. One I will not be repeating. Serena laughed, a high, bright sound that carried down the aisle, and Denise laughed with her, and Noah stood there between the two of them, feeling like a man who had just stepped into sunlight after a very long winter. The conversation kept going, easy and natural. Serena, who had inherited none of her father's reserve, told Denise about her favorite color, still purple, her best friend at the sitter's house, a girl named Maya, and the drawing she had made yesterday that was supposed to be a horse, but looked more like a dog with a long neck. Denise listened to every word like it mattered, asking follow-up questions, nodding seriously when Serena explained things, crouching slightly so they were closer to the same height. Noah watched it happen with a feeling he could not name. It was not just attraction, though that was there. It was not just nostalgia, though that was there too. It was something quieter, the recognition that Denise was not performing kindness for his daughter. She was simply kind. And Serena, who had spent her entire short life with only one parent, was blooming under the attention like a flower that had been waiting for rain. When Denise finally said she should get going, Serena waved at her with both hands and called out, "Bye, Miss Denise," loud enough for half the store to hear. Noah pushed the cart toward the checkout, but his mind was already somewhere else. He thought about the way Denise had looked at Serena, not with pity, not with hesitation, but with genuine affection. He thought about how she had not flinched when Serena chattered about their cat and their house and their life, the way some women might when they realized the man in front of them came with a whole world already built. He thought about the alternator sitting in a box on his workbench, waiting to be installed. That afternoon, while Serena was napping, Noah went to the garage and started working on Denise's car. He did not have to. He had told her it would be a couple of days, and Monday was only 2 days away. But his hands needed something to do, and the engine was easier to figure out than the mess inside his own head. He replaced the alternator in under 2 hours, checked the belts and hoses while he was at it, topped off the fluids, and ran the engine until he was satisfied it was solid. Then he stood in the empty garage, cleaned his hands with the degreaser by the sink, and picked up his phone. He stared at her name on the screen for a long time. Then he called. "Denise, it's Noah. Your car's ready. I was able to get the part in early." He cleared his throat. "You can come by the shop whenever you want to pick it up. I'll be here." It was a phone call about a car. That was all it had to be. But when he hung up, his heart was beating like he had just sprinted the length of the parking lot, and he knew that this was not about an alternator. Denise came to the garage the following morning. It was a Sunday, and the shop was technically closed. But Noah had told her he would be there, and he was. He had arrived an hour early, swept the floor, organized the tools on his workbench, and then felt ridiculous about all of it. She walked in wearing a light sweater and jeans, her hair down around her shoulders. The rain had stopped days ago, and the morning sun came through the open bay door and lit up the garage in a way that made the whole place look warmer than it was. "You fixed it fast," Denise said, running her hand along the hood of her car. "Wasn't as complicated as I thought." That was a lie. The alternator swap was straightforward, but Noah had spent 2 extra hours going over the entire engine because he wanted it done right. He wanted her to turn the key and feel the difference, to know that someone had taken care of something for her. "How much do I owe you?" Denise asked, reaching into her bag. Noah shook his head. "Don't worry about it." "Noah, I'm not letting you fix my car for free. Call it a friends and family discount. There's a discount, And then there's charity. I don't need charity." Her voice had an edge to it, not anger, but something close. Noah recognized it, because he carried the same edge himself. The refusal to be pitied. The need to stand on your own 2 feet, even when your knees were shaking. "All right," he said. "I'll write up an invoice, but I'm not charging full price, and you're going to have to live with that." Denise studied him for a moment. Then her shoulders softened. "Fine, but I'm buying you lunch sometime. Non-negotiable." "Deal." They stood there, on opposite sides of her car, and neither of them moved toward the door. The conversation had reached the point where it should have ended. Car fixed, payment discussed, transaction complete. But neither of them wanted to be the one to close it. "Can I ask you something?" Noah said. He leaned against the workbench, crossing his arms, not in defense, but because he needed to do something with his hands. "When you said you were back here figuring things out, what happened?" Denise looked down at her keys, turning them over in her fingers. "I was married," she said, "for almost 4 years. His name was Brandon, and I thought he was the one. We had the apartment, the plans, the whole picture." She stopped turning the keys and held them still. "He cheated. More than once. The first time I found out and he swore it would never happen again. The second time, he said the same thing. By the third time, I realized I wasn't even surprised anymore. I was just tired. Tired of being lied to. Tired of pretending that love was supposed to feel like constantly watching your back." Noah listened without interrupting, without moving. "I kept asking myself what I did wrong," Denise continued. "Like somehow, if I had been better, prettier, funnier, more interesting, he wouldn't have needed to look somewhere else. I know that's not how it works. I know that now. But when you're in it, when you're living inside that lie every day, it rewires the way you think about yourself." She looked up at him. "So when I say I'm figuring things out, what I mean is I'm trying to remember who I was before I spent 4 years becoming someone small enough to fit inside his version of a marriage." The garage was quiet. The morning sun had shifted, and the light that fell across the floor had moved closer to where they stood, like even the day was leaning in to listen. Noah uncrossed his arms. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. The words came out with more force than he intended, and he saw the surprise in her eyes. "I mean it, Denise. What he did, that's on him, not on you, not even a little." Her eyes went glassy, and she blinked hard, looking up at the ceiling for a second before bringing her gaze back to him. "You sound pretty sure about that." "I am sure, because I've been on the other side of it." He had not planned to say that, but the words were already out, and there was no pulling them back. Serena's mother left, not for someone else, just left. Decided she didn't want the life we had. I spent a long time thinking I should have been more, should have done something different. But eventually I figured out that some people leave because of who they are, not because of who you are. Denise was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, something shifted between them. The careful distance they had been maintaining, the safe, polite space of 2 old friends catching up, cracked open, and what was underneath was raw and real and terrifying in equal measure. "You're a good man, Noah," Denise said softly. "Your daughter is lucky." "I don't know about that. I'm just doing my best. That's more than a lot of people do." She picked up her bag from the chair and slung it over her shoulder. But she did not move toward the car. She stood there, caught between wanting to stay and being afraid of what staying might mean. "I should tell you something," she said. Her voice had changed, tighter, more careful. "I got a call yesterday from a marketing firm in Atlanta. They saw my resume online and they want me to come in for an interview. It's a good opportunity. The kind of thing I moved away from Beaumont to chase in the first place." Noah felt the words land in his chest like stones dropped into still water. Atlanta was 3 hours away. 3 hours and a completely different world from Beaumont, Georgia, where the biggest event of the year was the county fair, and the most exciting thing on a Saturday night was a bonfire at the lake. "That's great," he said. He made sure his voice was steady, even though something inside him had just gone cold. "Denise, that's really great. You should go for it." "Yeah." She nodded, but the word came out hollow. "Yeah, I think I should." They looked at each other across the garage, across the car he had fixed for her, the car that would carry her away from this town and away from him, just like everything good in Noah's life had a way of leaving. "You deserve that," Noah said. He pushed himself off the workbench and walked over to the driver's side door of her car, opening it for her. "You deserve a fresh start somewhere that isn't this little town, somewhere bigger than what I've got here." Denise took the keys from the counter and stood by the open door. She looked at Noah, really looked at him, and he could see the war behind her eyes. The part of her that wanted to argue, that wanted to say, "What if I don't want bigger? What if I just want this?" But she didn't say it. Because Denise Carter had spent 4 years learning not to trust what she wanted, and that lesson does not unlearn itself in a week. "Thank you for fixing my car," she said. "Anytime." She got in, started the engine, which turned over clean and strong, just the way Noah had intended, and pulled out of the bay into the morning light. Noah stood in the doorway and watched the silver Accord roll down Maple Street, signal left at the intersection, and disappear around the corner. The garage had never felt so empty. He walked back inside, turned off the lights in the bay, and locked the door. He drove home and found Serena at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of a cat that looked remarkably like Muffin. "Daddy, you look sad," she said, without looking up from her crayon. "I'm fine, baby girl." "You don't look fine." Noah sat down next to her and kissed the top of her head. "Sometimes grown-ups just have a lot on their minds." Serena considered this, then slid her drawing across the table toward him. "You can have this. It makes people feel better." He looked at the orange blob with whiskers and a crooked tail, and something in his chest tightened so hard he had to take a breath to loosen it. "Thank you, Serena. It's perfect." He put the drawing on the refrigerator next to all the others, a gallery of his daughter's heart, taped to the door of an old appliance, in a small kitchen, in a small house, in a small town where nothing ever changed, and he told himself that this was enough, that it had to be. Even though for the first time in 4 years, he was not sure he believed it. The days that followed moved slowly, like the hands of a clock winding down. Noah went through the motions, opened the shop at 7, worked through the afternoon, picked up Serena from the sitter, made dinner, read stories, turned off the lights. The routine was the same. Every piece was in its place, but the rhythm was off, like an engine running on 3 cylinders instead of 4. It still moved. It just did not feel right. He caught himself looking at the second bay more than he should have. The spot where Denise's silver Accord had sat for those few days was empty now, occupied by a pickup truck belonging to a man from 2 towns over who needed his transmission checked. Noah worked on it with his usual precision, but his mind kept drifting, back to the grocery store aisle, back to the Sunday morning in the garage, back to the way Denise had looked at him through the open car door before she drove away. He had told her to go. He had meant it, and he hated himself for meaning it. On a Tuesday evening, Noah was washing dishes after dinner while Serena sat on the kitchen floor, trying to convince Muffin to wear a doll's hat. The cat was tolerating it with the weary patience of an animal that had long since accepted its fate in this household. "Daddy," Serena said, adjusting the tiny hat on Muffin's orange head, "is Miss Denise going to come back?" Noah kept his hands in the soapy water. "I don't know, baby girl. I want her to come back. She listened to me talk about my horse drawing. Most grown-ups don't listen." Noah turned off the faucet and dried his hands on the towel hanging from the oven handle. He crouched down next to Serena and scratched Muffin behind the ears, which made the cat purr and the hat fall off sideways. "Some people come into your life for a little while," he said, choosing his words carefully, "and then they go somewhere else. It doesn't mean they didn't care, it just means they have their own path." Serena looked up at him with those dark eyes that saw more than a 5-year-old should. "But what if their path is supposed to be here?" Noah did not have an answer for that. He picked up the doll's hat, set it on the counter, and carried Serena to bed. He tucked her in with the stuffed elephant, turned on the crescent moon nightlight, and stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her curl up under the blanket. His daughter had asked him a question he had been avoiding for days. What if their path is supposed to be here? It was the kind of thing only a child would say, simple, direct, unburdened by all the reasons adults invented to keep themselves from reaching for what they wanted. Noah went to the living room, sat on the couch, and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet around him, and in that quiet, he let himself think the thought he had been refusing to think. He had let Denise go because he believed she deserved better than what he could offer. But the truth, the hard, uncomfortable, undeniable truth, was that he had also let her go because it was easier than risking everything. Easier than opening the door he had sealed shut after Tanya. Easier than admitting that somewhere between the rainy afternoon in the garage and the Sunday morning when she stood in his shop and told him about her broken marriage, he had started to feel something he had not felt in years, and he had pushed it away, not because it was wrong, but because it was real. That same night in a hotel room off the interstate about 60 miles north of Beaumont, halfway to Atlanta, Denise sat on the edge of a bed that was not hers, staring at a laptop screen full of notes she had written for the interview. She had left Sheila's place on Oak Street that morning, wanting to get closer to the city before the drive the next day. The marketing firm had sent her a detailed email about the position: brand strategy, competitive salary, benefits, room for growth. Everything she had spent years building her career toward. Everything that, on paper, looked like the answer to the question of what she was supposed to do next. She read her notes for the third time and realized she had not absorbed a single word. Her mind was in a garage on the corner of Maple and 3rd, watching a man with grease-stained hands open a car door for her and tell her she deserved something bigger than what he had. She could still hear the steadiness in his voice, the way he said it like he believed it, like he was handing her a gift, even though it was costing him everything. Denise closed the laptop and pressed her palms against her eyes. She had spent her whole adult life making the sensible choice. She had married Brandon because he was stable and successful, and everyone said they were perfect together. She had stayed in that marriage long after she knew it was broken, because leaving felt like failure. And when she finally did leave, she came back to Beaumont not because she wanted to, but because it was the only place she had left to go. Every decision, every turn, she had made them out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being wrong, fear of standing still long enough for the pain to catch up. And now, here she was, about to do it again. Running toward Atlanta not because she wanted that job, but because staying in Beaumont meant staying near Noah, and staying near Noah meant feeling something, and feeling something meant she could get hurt again. She knew the pattern. She had lived inside it for years, and for the first time, sitting in that hotel room with her interview notes going blurry on a screen she was not reading, she saw it clearly, not as strength or ambition or independence, but as the same fear wearing different clothes. Denise picked up her phone and looked at the last call in her log. Noah's number, from the day he had called to tell her the car was ready. She had not deleted it. She had not saved it either. It just sat there in her recent calls, waiting. She put the phone down. She picked it up again. She set it on the nightstand, turned off the lamp, and lay in the dark, thinking about a man who had told her she deserved more, and wondering if he knew that what she actually wanted was not more, but him. The next afternoon, the sky over Beaumont turned dark and heavy, the kind of gray that settles in like it plans to stay. By 3 o'clock, the rain had started. Not the gentle kind, but the kind that falls in sheets and makes the gutters overflow and turns the parking lot of Wright Auto Repair into a shallow lake, just like it had the first day Denise walked in. Noah was under the hood of the pickup truck when he heard tires on wet gravel. He did not think anything of it. The bell above the door chimed, and a voice he was not expecting cut through the sound of the rain. "I think something's wrong with my car again." He straightened up and turned around. Denise stood in the doorway of his shop, rain dripping from her jacket, her hair damp against her shoulders. She was holding her keys in one hand, and there was something in her expression that was different from every other time he had seen her. A steadiness, a resolve, like she had driven here not on impulse but on purpose. "What's it doing?" Noah asked, pulling the rag from his shoulder and tucking it into his back pocket. "It's making a noise, a sort of ticking sound, under the hood." Noah studied her face. The car he had fixed had been in perfect condition when she drove it out of here. He had checked every hose, every belt, every connection. He knew that car was running clean. And from the look in her eyes, Denise knew he knew. "Let me take a look," he said. He walked out to the parking lot in the rain, popped the hood of the silver Accord, and listened to the engine. It ran smooth and quiet. No tick, no rattle, no hesitation. The alternator was solid, the belts were tight, the fluids were full. There was nothing wrong with this car, and they both knew it. He closed the hood and walked back inside, rain soaking through his shirt. Denise was standing by the workbench, exactly where she had stood the first time she came in. The same spot, the same rain hammering the tin roof above them, the same garage, the same light, the same two people who had been circling each other for weeks, afraid to land. "Car sounds fine to me," Noah said quietly. "Yeah," Denise said. "I thought it might." The rain filled the space between them, steady, rhythmic, relentless. Noah stood a few feet away from her, close enough to see the way her hands were trembling slightly, close enough to notice that her eyes were red, like she had been crying on the drive over or fighting not to. "I didn't go to Atlanta," Denise said. Noah felt his breath catch. "What happened to the interview?" "I canceled it." She set her keys down on the workbench, and the small metallic sound was the loudest thing in the room. "I was sitting in a hotel room last night, going over my notes, trying to get excited about a job in a city where I don't know anyone, in a building where nobody knows my name. And I kept thinking about this garage, about the way you looked at me when I told you about Brandon, about the way your daughter asked me what my favorite color was like it was the most important question in the world." Her voice cracked, and she stopped talking for a second to steady herself. "I have spent my entire adult life choosing the safe thing," she continued, "the smart thing, the thing that looked right from the outside, and every single time I ended up somewhere I didn't want to be, feeling like someone I didn't recognize." She took a step closer to him. "I don't want to do that anymore, Noah. I don't want to run from the one thing that has felt real in longer than I can remember." Noah did not move. His hands were at his sides, still damp from the rain, still carrying the faint smell of motor oil that never fully washed away. He looked at this woman who had sat 2 rows ahead of him in history class, who had left this town and come back broken and brave, who had stood in his shop on a rainy day and told him a truth she had carried for 15 years, and he felt every wall he had ever built start to tremble. "Denise," he said, and his voice was rough. "I'm a mechanic in a small town. I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a cat that won't take a bath in a house with 2 bedrooms. That's my life. That's all of it. I can't give you Atlanta. I'm not asking for Atlanta." She closed the distance between them until she was standing right in front of him, close enough that he could see the rain on her eyelashes and the way her chest rose and fell with each breath. "I wish you were mine," she whispered. The same 6 words from the first day. But this time they were not an accident, not a slip, not something that escaped before she could catch it. This time, Denise said them looking straight into his eyes, with her voice steady and her hands still, the way a person speaks when they have chosen their words, and they mean every single one. Noah looked at her. He thought about Tanya leaving before sunrise. He thought about the note on the kitchen counter. He thought about 4 years of early mornings and late nights and doing everything alone, because that was the only way he knew to keep his world from falling apart. And then he thought about Serena in the grocery store, laughing with Denise over a story about a cat. He thought about the drawing on the refrigerator. He thought about his daughter's voice asking, "What if their path is supposed to be here?" He reached out and took Denise's hand. Her fingers were cold from the rain, and when they closed around his, he felt something settle inside him. Not excitement, not fear, but the deep, quiet certainty of a decision that had been waiting to be made. "I'm 2," he said. 2 words, ungrammatical, unpolished, imperfect. But they were the truest thing Noah Wright had said in years, and when Denise heard them, the tears she had been holding back finally fell. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being caught after a very long fall. He pulled her into him, and she pressed her face against his chest, and the rain pounded the tin roof above them like it was trying to wash the whole world clean. His shirt was wet, and his hands left faint smudges of grease on the back of her jacket, and neither of them cared. They stood there in the middle of his small garage, between the toolboxes and the oil stains and the workbench where he had built his life, one repair at a time, and they held on like 2 people who had finally stopped running. 3 weeks later, on a warm Saturday afternoon, the bay doors of Wright Auto Repair were open wide, letting the spring air drift through the shop. Noah was underneath a Chevy Tahoe, replacing the brake pads, when he heard Serena's voice from the front of the garage. "Miss Denise, look, I drew you a picture." "Let me see." Denise's voice came from somewhere near the waiting area, where she had set up a small folding table with her laptop. She had taken a remote freelance position with a firm based out of Savannah, not the Atlanta job, not the big leap, but something that let her work on her own terms while she figured out what she wanted her life to look like. For now, that life was in Beaumont. "Oh, sweetheart, is that the garage? That's Daddy under the car, and that's you, and that's Muffin." "Muffin is at the garage? She comes sometimes. Daddy doesn't know." Noah smiled from under the Tahoe. He knew. He had found orange cat hair on his work rag 3 times this week. He slid out from under the vehicle and sat up, wiping his hands on the rag that lived permanently on his shoulder. From where he sat, he could see them. Serena perched on the chair next to Denise, swinging her legs, holding up a crayon drawing with 4 figures on it. Denise was leaning in, studying the drawing with the same serious attention she gave everything Serena showed her, pointing at each figure and asking questions. It was not a perfect picture. Denise still had days when the old doubts crept in, when Brandon's voice echoed in the back of her mind, telling her she was not enough. Noah still had mornings when he woke up and reached for the other side of the bed, half expecting it to be empty, half braced for another note on the kitchen counter. They were 2 people with cracks running through them, held together not by the absence of damage but by the decision to stay anyway. Denise had not moved in. They were taking it slow. Dinners together, afternoons at the garage, weekends at the park where Serena ran circles around both of them. There was no rush. There was no deadline. For the first time in both of their lives, neither of them was trying to get somewhere else. Noah stood up and walked over to where Denise and Serena were sitting. Serena held up the drawing for him to see. "Daddy, I made our family." He looked at the picture. 4 crayon figures standing in front of a rectangle that was supposed to be the garage. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small, and 1 orange blob that was unmistakably Muffin. Serena had drawn them all holding hands except for the cat, who was off to the side doing its own thing, which Noah thought was the most accurate part of the whole drawing. He looked at Denise over Serena's head. She was watching him with an expression he had come to recognize over these past few weeks. Not the careful, guarded look she had worn when she first walked into his shop, but something open and unafraid. Something that said, "I chose this. I choose this. Every day I choose this." Noah took the drawing from Serena's hands. "This one goes on the fridge," he said. Serena cheered. Denise smiled. And Noah carried the drawing to the small refrigerator in the back of the shop, the one he kept stocked with juice boxes for Serena and bottled water for customers, and taped it to the door, right at the center, where everyone who walked in could see it. 4 figures, 1 garage, a life built not from perfection, but from the ordinary courage of 2 people who had every reason to walk away and chose, instead, to stay. The rain would come again. It always did in southern Georgia. But Noah Wright was no longer a man who kept his world small to keep it safe. He was a man who had opened the door, let someone in, and found out that the thing he had been most afraid of, needing someone, was also the thing that made everything else make sense. And in a small garage at the corner of Maple and 3rd, where the sign out front still read, "Wright Auto Repair," and the coffee machine still did not work, a second chance had finally become a beginning. Sometimes the right person does not show up at the right time. Sometimes they show up in the middle of a rainstorm, with a broken-down car and a confession that is 15 years overdue. And sometimes all it takes is 2 imperfect words to change everything. If this story reminded you of someone, or maybe reminded you of yourself, share it with them. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel so you do not miss what comes next. Because there are more stories like this one, stories about ordinary people finding the courage to stay,